So after the most recent chapter of Blue Lock,
yeah, spoiler alert.
it seems as though Nagi will be going from the Neo League to Sunday League. But the question is, after having such an exciting initial start to Blue Lock, what happened and what's next for an individual who seemed to have a lot of potential, but it seems like he just doesn't have it anymore? Well, I think it's kind of something we've all seen, because initially within Blue Lock, Nagi was super exciting because he was this raw individual, basically a diamond in the rough that you didn't necessarily know what he could become, because he could still do amazing things, but he wasn't really serious. And as time passed, he had cool moments. But once he entered the Neo League, he started to struggle here and there. And then we started to see Nagi's character start to basically show itself, in that Nagi is blank, but not in the cool way that we thought he was. Because initially he had this demeanor that looked like he didn't really care about much, and everybody just assumed that as soon as he started caring, he would become the most dangerous striker in Blue Lock. But that never really happened. And the more you started to see him struggle, the more you realized that Nagi was an individual who didn't really have a direction. Honestly, it felt like this dream wasn't his. It was Ryo's dream till the end, because with Nagi, he had this phase where he felt like he needed to leave Ryo to become stronger, which was a good move. But if you really think about it, he just replaced Ryo with basically Asagi. And then after Asagi was gone, when he felt like he beat Asagi, he then kind of just went back to Ryo. So you could see that in terms of a character, he could never really stand alone. He just doesn't have it. Blue Lock has been showing us that a lot of these characters need a mentality to become the best. And funny enough, a lot of people like to take digs at Shido for basically being kinda like Nagi, in that he doesn't really do much the entire match and then just kinda scores a goal. But the difference between Nagi and Shido is that Shido wants it. And that's the thing that a lot of people don't want to discuss when it comes to Shido, because Shido is so desperate to become one of the best strikers that it has literally caused him to have fights with his own teammates because he wants to be so successful. But also, he's been literally willing to just put his ego to the side, and he worked with Rin to try and win. And arguably, if you kind of think about it, he's one of the few characters within the entire league who was being marked by one guy the entire game. He's totally different. But the difference is, when it comes to Nagi, he doesn't have that fire. When you see him basically have that final moment where he could have made a difference, you start to realize that honestly, when he's not facing basic individuals, he's kind of predictable. Because in the most pivotal point of the chapter, Nagi had two options: one, pass to Ryo, or two, find a way to score. But what we saw was that everyone kind of predicted what he was going to do, so he couldn't just straightforward go and score. But then on the other side, when he did the most predictable thing, which is pass to Ryo, that kind of just showed you who he is. And though people might not like me saying this, there's something about Nagi that really reminds me a lot about Ness. He's kind of really reliant on Ryo, but ultimately he couldn't really do much. And even though this is gonna sound super disrespectful, what is the difference between current Nagi and Baro at the beginning of Blue Lock? They're both these individual characters who rely on one trick to try and score, but the difference is Baro was able to adapt his game and he's become arguably one of the most intriguing strikers. That's why basically he's a dog. But with Nagi, he hasn't really developed mentally or just even physically. It doesn't seem like he really improved at all. But the question is, what's next for Nagi? This is where I think it's going to be difficult, because on one side, I could see that there is a possibility that Nagi could get another chance to compete. But the problem is, when does it start to ruin the story, where every single time a really good character basically loses, they get an opportunity to come back? We saw that with Kunagami, but at least he kind of did something. If Nagi gets another opportunity within the Japan youth team, what does that say for Blue Lock in general? It kind of just loses the whole point of putting it all on the line to be the best. And realistically speaking, where does he play? Because if you look at all of the formations you could come up with, there's no way that Nagi as a striker, considering his skill set, is better than Isagi, is better than Rin, is better than Baro, or even Shido. Even though people hate him a lot, he's not that guy, especially in terms of a striker, because he doesn't offer much. Honestly, he just becomes a big black hole within your team. This is now where Blue Lock has to make a pretty interesting decision, because Nagi is extremely popular, but at the same time, is he really good enough to be within the Japan youth team? answer's probably no. But if he does find a way to return, what exactly is going to happen, because the other characters prove themselves through various games as to why they deserve that spot. And it kind of feels weird to give Nagi that spot based on possibly one mission or one exam he could take and then he's back in the team. It kind of seems unfair. It's gonna be pretty interesting to see what happens moving forward in terms of Blue Lock. But the next time I talk about Blue Lock, I actually want to talk about how amazing Shiro is and how people keep sleeping on him.